Tim's going to run the Jerry Springer mic, and I'm handing this one off to you, Jack.
All right. And you and I, Nick, will share this mic, and Alan's got a wireless. All right. So the first thing I did want to do is I realized when we put Alan up here, we didn't actually tell you who he was. And some of you know very well who he is, and some of you don't. My first introduction to Alan was Paul Wheaton asked me to sell a course on plant genetics that he taught. I took the course myself, and I was completely blown the F away. I then got to meet him a couple times up at Nicole's events in Tennessee. He is one of the most intellectually switched on people I've met in a multidisciplinary way. He comes from an engineering background, but we're talking now about plants. And this guy knows more about plants than I think maybe Nick and I do together. If any of y'all were here for the panel we did, where it was me, Nick, Matt Powers, and Stephen Reisner, on that panel, when we got done, I said to Nick, I said, how do you think that went? He goes, I think it went good, but I feel like an imbecile now. Because Stephen is just like a savant with like the Korean natural farming, the integrated pest management, all of it. Alan's that dude in about 10 different things. He's going to be talking to you guys tomorrow about buildings that work with nature, passive building construction, things like that. He's worked on really amazing, like high-end aquaponics projects. He knows a tremendous about plants, plant breeding, line breeding, animal line breeding as well. And he's doing a really, anybody hear the interview I did with him about that stuff? No? Okay. Okay, few. Just make sure you guys realize he's not just here to talk about money. That's kind of important. I want to start out with, I guess, a question, since we're supposed to be talking about plant types and home food production. For both of you guys, if you had to pick for a smaller homesteader, somebody on a property smaller than mine even, one animal to work with, which animal would it be and why? For food production.
Maybe do you want to go first?
I can. So I will also say that, I did start studying permaculture in the 1990s, and so I started teaching permaculture in the early 2000s, and I've consulted in a lot of different climate zones. So as a permaculturist what my answer to that is going to be, Jack, which is it depends. And one of the things it depends upon is which climate zone you're in. If you're in the tropics, then the answer is easy. Aquaculture, right? In the more you're in subtropics, like down here, where in the subtropics, what you start realizing is that a lot of nutrient is in the water, and water and the aquatic ecosystems are the most productive per unit area of anything.
Yes.
Okay. So if you're in the tropics, that's great. But the farther away from the equator you go, the more that changes. And then you start getting into the fact that the animals, the fish that live in those ecosystems are not adapted to high nutrient density. They're not nearly as productive per unit time. Okay. So as we get up further north, if you're living up, further north from here up towards Canada, now you're starting to go into animals that can change unedible things to humans into human food. And you notice by the time you get up to like the Inuit peoples, what are they eating? They're basically eating meat. They're almost a complete carnivore diet from animals that can eat lichens and things like that they can't eat. Okay. So if you look at it that way and you're on a small homestead, you're like, okay, what can we take that would allow us, in my particular situation, to be able to take plant material and bring it down and give it into create a high value product, whether that be meat or dairy, out of it. And so it would be place specific. Chickens can work in some areas, but in a lot of cases, being able to grow in a small space, everything you need to feed most of the chicken breeds is difficult. So you would need a chicken breed that was basically one of the old homestead breeds that was designed to forage the vast majority of its feed for itself. Not one of the newer hybrids that's basically designed like a Ferrari, and you have to feed it high energy density food or it just will not survive. Okay, so you could do that. Rabbits are classic if you're very constrained. The problem is, what do we know about fat in rabbits? Very low fat. So if you don't have another source of fat, you're out of it. So a small ruminant, if you have enough room, makes a lot of sense, which goes back to Nick's presentation. It's like the productivity of some of these small ruminants really good, and you can feed them on tree fodder, you can feed them on forage, grass forage and so forth. So I think in the temperate zones, moving in that direction would be what I would have to say.
Yeah, I waffle between a couple of different things, and it really does. It's context is king in this situation. If I had to pick one, gun to my head, it's going to be a rabbit. It's going to be rabbits. However, something I'll say this with this caveat that I do need to dig more into hard numbers and data on this, but I am very, very interested in the feasibility and the utility of guinea pigs as a small, yes, they are a lot higher fat content. Yep. I've looked into raising them for my livestock guardian dog feed supplementation or part of their total feed plan. So I know if I can raise them for my dogs sustainably, then I ought to be able to raise them for myself. I've had cuy in Ecuador when I've traveled down there to do some consulting in the past. It's not my favorite because it's kind of greasy. Yep. But if it's like, hey, you have to raise protein and you have to do it in a very small footprint, I would probably lean towards that. Kind of in the less brittle climates where we get not necessarily subtropical, but we're not in the northern climate zones, I would lean more towards quail, especially if we're able to add quail in as a supplementation to the rabbits. So if I'm cheating on the answer, then we've got our rabbits producing a great amount of matter that I can convert through black soldier fly larvae, for instance. And then all of a sudden I can create a high fat, high protein feed for birds like chickens or quail. So I don't like having to nail down a single thing because adding more supporting structures to it makes it more resilient and means more recycling. Yeah. So if I had to pick one, I would probably lean more towards something like guinea pig because of the fat content. But if I had my druthers, then it would be multiple systems all stacked together.
How about rabbits with just a couple of guinea hog in a K&F system?
That would be pretty stellar.
So the thing is that the rabbits will give you bulk meat. Anybody familiar with the guinea hog? Mm-hmm. It's a lard hog. It was designed specifically to be a high fat content. So it gives you all your cooking fat and a lot of your fat supplementation. So, yeah.
My answer is very similar to Alan's, and it has a lot to do with where you're at. Obviously, we have chosen ducks as our keystone species here. But the thing that we actually kill and eat the most is catfish. And that's because we're in a warm climate, even when it freezes over, even with the limitations I have and the small ponds I have, we can grow the hell out of catfish. And I can infinitely restock them. There's a place that my grandson and I go fishing about 15 minutes from here at a park, little city park. We call it the Karen Pond. And that's because there's a lady that thinks it's her job to tell everybody what they're allowed and not allowed to do, even when they're not doing the things that they're not allowed to do. She just wants you to know it. But we can go down there with some salted shrimp for bait. for half an hour and bring 50 bullheads home and plunk them in one of those systems out there. And we can do that in the spring. And by September, they're all about 11 to 12 inches long, which is for a bullhead kind of the perfect time for them to graduate. But then I kind of screwed this up for them because what I really meant when I said one, I meant where do you start? So for that, that's our start. And then we have all the aquaponic systems. And then we have all the composting systems that integrate with the ducks. And then the ducks integrate with the aquatic system. But the system I run here would be very difficult to run, let's say, in central Ohio, right? The amount of freezing, the growth rate on the fish, like even the same fish, you're not going to get the growth rate I get because you don't have the number of hours of warm weather to do that. So it is all very dependent. But I just want to get us off on I hope that got y'all thinking, because I hate doing a panel and go like, who has a question? And then everybody looks at you like this. And then I have to call on Jake. So does anybody have a question? No, David. Stop, Jake. Okay. So what James wants to know is, have I eaten any of the crayfish? I have eaten some of them. I haven't eaten a lot of them yet. I ate them to like test the viability. Is it worth doing? This is something that started last year. I went down to the fish store. Do you have any marble crayfish? These are self-cloning crayfish. They're all they-thems. They're all hermaphroditic, right? I got 5. I put all 5 in one tank out there. I brought in like 5 more today, little babies and a couple bigger ones for that new tank that we're going to be working on later. There's probably 25 of them in that tank. So that's worked out really well. They overwintered, but I don't know how well they'll do. I see that not as a staple. It'll be more like, 4 or 5 times a year, they'll be like with something else on a plate, right? They're like a really, it's cool that you can do that. Crayfish are actually really easy to propagate and breed if you have the space and the right environment. The type of tanks that I have out here is not what you're looking for your typical crayfish that have to breed and stuff. Like rice paddies are great. Shallow water, lots of mud. That's what they want. And I can't do that here.
So 2 questions. The catfish, is that going to give you your fat content? And my second question is, the salted shrimp, are they peel on or shell off?
All right. So the catfish actually have a dramatically high fat content compared to, I would say they're equivalent to like the fat content of like good quality salmon. So when we cook the catfish, the channels or the bullheads, we mostly cook them on the grill, and they start to render out. And when they start to render out, that's about when they're done. And that fat will actually go down. And if you're on an actual grill, it'll give a little bit of flare up, and that'll kind of kiss it and get that char on it. And they're pretty freaking good. What was the second question? Oh, salted shrimp. So, all I mean by salted shrimp, I go by, this is for bait. This is not for us to eat. Sounds good, but it ain't for us to eat. I go to Walmart and I buy the cheapest freaking shell off raw. Very important that it's raw shrimp you can get. Throw it in a Ziploc bag and cover it with salt. And then it's going to get wet as hell. Dump all the water out of it. Take it out. Put it in a colander. Kind of knock the salt off it. Let it drain for a while. Just put it back in the bag. It'll keep in the refrigerator for a year. And it's incredible bait. It maybe doesn't get as many bites as a fresh shrimp, but it's like a piece of shrimp jerky. They can't get it off. And I've caught 5 or 6 catfish on one piece. I also have caught really big channel cats. I caught about an 8-pound channel cat on a little tiny piece of it just a few years ago. And I've done really well in saltwater with it too. So it works really well for that. So. Shell off with shrimp. It sucks. They steal it with the shell on.
Yeah. So one very quick side note, you're talking about working on a grill. If you are in a situation where the fat is very important because you're having to fight for calories, grill is not the thing to do because you're going to lose a lot of the fat. Sure. In those situations, turning it into a stew will save every last little bit of fat for you. So you're going to see that in a lot of If you're in a situation where you're fighting for calories and you need every bit of meat and every bit of fat, think about stews and soups, because then you don't lose it. Or make a gravy out of the pan drippings, but don't let that go. That's gold under those circumstances.
So we go back to colonial America all the way up to the Civil War. Soldiers would be given rations, but they had to cook them for themselves. And it was the military's preference that everything was a soup or a stew.
Yeah.
They didn't want anything roasted because of that right there.
Yep.
Kind of a high level question. Do you think that the recent trend that seems like it's going to continue with the arid to humid line traditionally at the 100th meridian west, moving where there's more arid further to the east, do you think that that would change much of how you would plan a design out if you wanted to set something up for multi-generational homesteads?
Yeah. So I teach that a lot. I don't know, Nick, if you want to hit that or you. Okay. So here is basically what I'm telling everybody right now. There's a lot of theory. Those theories are based upon models. I've looked at those models. All those models do not capture the complexity of the real climate. So we don't really know exactly what's going to go on. So here's my design brief when I'm telling professional designers now. It's like, what we do know is because what we're seeing is there's increased energy in the climate system. When you take a complex system like the climate and you put more energy in it, guess what happens? It becomes more dynamic. And so here's what you need to do. Take your historical extremes, okay, and assume this. The wets get wetter, the dries get drier. The hots get hotter, the colds get colder. The shorts get shorter, the longs get longer. What I mean by that is, last year we had it go from where I was in Huntsville from 74 degrees down to 4 degrees in 18 hours. Okay? In other words, the skews sometimes will go really fast, but in other times your droughts could be longer or your wet periods could be longer. So take your extreme longs and your extreme shorts and assume that the shorts get shorter and the longs get longer, and design more robustness into your system around all of that, every which direction, because you're not just going to see, the humidity line moved. Okay, maybe it did. That doesn't mean that it's never going to get more humid than it ever did before. People are looking at it and going, all of our climate on our farm, we've been on here for 5 generations, it's all getting warmer on average and our hots are getting hotter. But then last winter, we got colder than we'd ever gotten before. And then things died that had been in for years. And it's like, your hots get hotter, your colds get colder, your wets get wetter, your dries get drier. You have to design for extremes to get more extreme-y. That's my best design advice right now for what we're seeing.
Yeah. Your question asked, would that affect how I am designing or how we are designing things when in the context of multi-generational thinking? It wouldn't impact how I'm designing it because I'm designing it specifically to handle that kind of increasing volatility. If you notice, I had those swale lines in there. I understand that the more of those tree lines I get in there, I'm going to get a little bit of a reduction in the solar gain. That's both a positive and a negative. But that enables me to weather more extremes, both in the positive and negative in terms of rainfall. I'm able to, with swivel pipes, just very simple swivel pipes in those swales. If we have too much water, I can shunt that water off of my landscape and I can prevent it from absorbing a tremendous amount. If I'm uncertain whether or not we're going to have a dry spell and we are not oversaturated, I can swivel those pipes right up and I can soak tens, if not hundreds of thousands of gallons underground. And so, designing these systems the way that we design them, it is specifically to account for those increasing volatile situations.
2 best things you can do. Number 1, get your soil organic matter higher. Number 2 is make certain you have good, solid, robust trees in the right locations. Those 2 things will robustify your almost any site in the temperate zone. It's a little different for the tropics. For the temperates, that's what you want to do.
So basically, they've getting the same answer I'm going to give, but I'm going to give it a little bit differently in that I don't care that that's happening when it comes to design work or anything like it. I always want to design the most resiliency into a system anyway, but I do believe that is happening. I've been tracking that dry line movement, and it's drastically reduced our rainfall. When we moved in here, we did an urban permaculture course. It was glorious, Nick, and we one of the stats that the students pulled as using this as a model property for that design project was our rainfall. And it was anywhere between 48 and 68 inches a year here. Good freaking luck with that at this point, right? I think last year we had 27 inches of rainfall. And that is drastically different. And then our little area, I don't even trust that number because I can't tell you over the past few years how many times it was raining over there. It was raining over there. It was raining over there. And it was raining back there. And you know what it was doing here? It was not raining. I mean, I could see and smell the rain, but I couldn't get it. And I don't know if that has anything to do with the changing of the climate. And I'll just say, I know there's a lot of people like, Jack Spirko's a climate change denier. No, I am a denier that giving Al Gore my money will change the weather. I absolutely believe we're changing the climate. I just believe it has a hell of a lot less to do with CO2 concentration. That's a very minor thing. I think doing desertification to millions of acres is a problem. And what this all makes me think of is I read this book and it had outtakes from a diary by a guy that was cutting trees down in Montana for silver mining in the 1800s. And he said in his diary how they could see as they cut the trees down, creeks stopped running.
Yes.
So if you don't think that's going to change climate, then I don't think you understand climate. You're not qualified to be the weather girl in a bikini on the off channel, let alone an actual meteorologist or a scientist or anything like it.
Yeah. Look up the terms small water cycle, biotic pump. Okay. And part of what Jack was describing sounds like urban heat island effect from this big urban area right off his port bow, and because we have to do design interventions because the way that these urban areas are affecting the small water cycle in the immediate area, they'll cause that kind of disruptive pattern.
And if you want to understand the small water cycle, you can take a course on cover cropping at homefoodsystems.com.
Okay, speaking of Homes Food Systems. First of all, the soup comment, amazing, right? Because that's keeping everything in the pot, which reminds me of pottage, the rolling soup.
Yes.
And to make pottage interesting, it can't taste the same every day.
Right.
To make 600 pounds of lamb I just grew interesting, it can't taste the same every day. Otherwise, you're eating the same thing every single day. So if we have a core food caloric thing, what 3 things would you grow on or integrate into your system to be able to add more flavor variety if you're going to be depending on your system at home? And how would you do that?
Who wants to go first? I have answers, but I don't want to hog the mic.
Yeah, if I had to pick 3 things, it would be hot peppers, because there's a tremendous amount of variety in the flavors and the expressions you can get out of hot peppers. I would pick a handful of just climate appropriate perennial herbs that I can either perennials or self-sowing annuals that I can just get established and just set it and forget it. And the third would be alliums. I love elephant garlic because you get it going, you get it really established, and you can just pull a little bit from it every year, forever, and just it's almost a set it and forget it. You just got to feed it a little bit, keep it mulched. Those are the 3 things that I'd pick.
Yeah, I agree with the herbs, the perennial herbs. I love spices. The tricky part is that a lot of the spices we like to use the most are climate dependent and they're hard to do. So you have to really have some sophisticated juju to grow some of those spices. But other thing is some of those spices, I've done herbal medicine for an awfully long time, and some of the spices are highly medicinal as well. So, I've used them in a lot of purposes. So that's been tricky. I haven't been able to figure out the spices. I would say, coming back to that whole thing of soups and stews, soups and stews can actually really do a lot of magic, because so what you're ending up doing is you're ending up saving your pan drippings and so on and so forth, and making those into stocks, making those into gravies. And then you can, if you have access to any sort of dairy like cream, now you can make creamed gravies and so forth. So now you can really start to, whereas herbs and spices just change the flavor profile, moving them into different kinds of soups and stews, where we can chunk it up, or we can take it and turn it into like a ground meat or whatever. Now we're changing the texture, and we're also changing the texture of the dish it's in by making it into a thin soup or into a thick stew or whatever. And then that diversifies it from, oh, here's a lamb steak or a lamb whatever. It really diversifies the whole overall presentation. So I would do those things to mix it up.
I agree with both of them. And it's like, I can answer your question as to what I would grow, but I'm going to put all my focus on the kitchen and the technique, right? I'm going to give you more of a chef's answer, right? Like, you want lamb to taste different? I can make you 5 different types of lamb sausage that all taste different. Lamb stew, lamb shanks, stuff like that's going to taste drastically different than that leg that we made out there the other night, which was, honest to God, one of the best things anybody here has ever eaten. It was, the dog cried. It was so good. I mean, it was amazing. But like, I completely agree with Nick on but see, I'm gonna go broader with individual answers to only get 3. So I'm not gonna say hot peppers. I'm gonna say peppers, because peppers across the board, sweet to hot, and everything in between. Yeah, it can just sit somewhere here for a minute. I'll get it later. And then, herbs. I was right where I was going to go. Herbs, peppers, and alliums. That's your what to plant. But then take that and leverage that in the kitchen. Leverage that on the smoker. Leverage that with soups and stews. And get really creative. Like, I've now smoked that lamb femur like 3 times. I'm gonna make stock out of it, right? And that's gonna be awesome. And even though I'm not gonna do our drunk idea of cutting it down the middle with a bandsaw that has grease on it that's not for food, I probably will break it before I make stock out of it. I'll put it on something and just smack it and crack it and get all of that goodness out of it, and that'll make a very deep, rich stew. I'll tell you, you guys, you want an animal that works for stocks? Duck. Duck stock is some of the most ridiculously delicious stock. Somehow there's a sweetness to it. And I don't know where that comes from, because there's no sugar in a duck. But there is a sweetness to a duck stock. So I would say more focus, if that's your issue. I have like 1 or 2 things. How many things can you do with it in the kitchen? Because I could make lamb taste different 5 nights in a row with just salt, pepper, and lamb, based on the technique that I would use to cook it.
And use every part of the lamb.
Yeah. And the other thing on the fat thing, some of your animals that have lower fat values, you know what has lots of fat in every animal? Liver. And I don't like liver. Okay, grind it up and make it into sausage. It will make the sausage taste better. I don't know how, because I don't like liver either. Liver is nasty. But at like a 10% ratio in ground meat, it's freaking delicious.
So we do 5% liver, 5% heart for a lot of ruminants.
Yeah.
And it's actually better than straight.
Yeah. The heart's good, but it doesn't have fat.
Right.
Really, it shouldn't. But the liver is fatty, man. It's delicious if you do it the right way.
So I have 130 acres up in northeastern Oklahoma, and it's reclaimed coal mining land. So they blew the hell out of it. You got Volkswagen-sized limestone boulders in the ground. But my concern is when they put it all back together, they terraced it for erosion, which is really cool. When the water hits the highlands, it goes into the soil and then it pops out about halfway down. So I got some what look like springs. I'm going to be building ponds further down. My concern is, after hearing you talk about some of the rivers up in Pennsylvania, is there any toxins that I need to look out for, either for the fish downstream? You know, it's been settled for at least 30, 40 years for sure. But do you think there's anything I need to look out for?
So there's a lot of different toxins that could be there. It doesn't mean that they will be or that they will all be. But what you're talking about in my discussions about what happened in Pennsylvania with the streams, most places you find coal, you also find sulfur. And it was the sulfur leaching that did so much damage up there. The sulfur would get so high in the water, then it would oxidize, which is a nice way of saying rust. And the water was literally orange. It was like an orange slime on the rocks. And not only was that a problem of itself, but since it was oxidizing, that means to bond with oxygen. So it plummeted the O2 levels in those streams. The interesting thing is, and this is why I would start with a water test, because the only thing they did to fix it, they didn't actually clean the streams up. They made the coal mines and all the coal companies, including the coal companies that had a different name, because they just change their name every 10 years. And they say, I don't know, Charlie Martin Coal Company owned that. And like, you're the Redding Company, and you bought the Charlie Martin Coal Company as a subsidiary, and then you changed its name 4 times, and then you went out of business with it, but it's really your company. They made those companies go cap all the leaching. I left for the Army in 1989 or 1990 is when I actually left. And I came home in 1994, and some of those streams I talked about, I caught native brook trout out of. In just 4 years, it changed that much. So there's a lot of potential for things to be good there. You know, you should look at like the stuff that Alan and Billy have been doing with biochar and remediation in North Carolina. But start with a water test and see what you're dealing with that water that's coming out. Because I'm also concerned about mercury. I'm also concerned about zinc. I mean, zinc is good, but not too much of it. Like I've seen places burned because of zinc. Like the trees just look like they burned chemically is what I mean when I say burned. So find out what's there, and then you know what to do based on what you're trying to deal with.
So let me ask a question. What are you seeing with reestablishment of pioneer species on the land?
What's growing?
What's growing right now?
Come up here and take the mic.
Unfortunately, on the lowlands, a lot of invasive stuff. And I'm probably going to say this wrong, but Cerisa lespedeza, I guess familiar with that. It's a real brushy, and it's that tall and thick.
Okay.
A brush hog bogs down. So that's in the lowlands. And where the water's coming out of the hill, a lot of typical marshy stuff, willows, things of that nature. Okay. And the highlands, Johnson grass, kind of native prairie stuff.
Yeah. So I've had to do an awful lot of bioremediation. That's what Jack was talking about. We went over in Western North Carolina and helped them get bioremediation going after the floods there. I also did a little Lahaina fire bioremediation stuff. And so anytime I've had to go in and work with coal mines before, previous coal mines. As Jack was saying, heavy metals can, according to the exact chemical composition of that particular coal seam that they were mining, those heavy metals can vary. So, and the heavy metals, can end up in the soils. So what do you do with that? Well, how long ago was the mine? 30, 40 years? Okay. So your organic compounds will have already basically gone. It would be the heavy metals you are interested in right now. So you just need to make certain whether the heavy metals are there. Okay. So you could do soil tests to see if there are heavy metals that are there, because those can bioaccumulate in your plants. As a matter of fact, that's one of the ways we clean them up. So the 2 ways to deal with heavy metals in the soils, if you have them, is what I call bioaccumulate and remove, or immobilization. Immobilization is to basically lock up the heavy metal so that it is chemically inert. And guess what you do in order to make that happen? It's basically biochar and soil organic matter. Okay, that will, as you get the soil microbiome reestablished, it'll lock up those heavy metals and immobilize them. The other way of doing it is that if you know what the particular heavy metals are that you're interested in. There are certain genuses and families that will bioaccumulate that. And if it's particularly high, the way we have to do that is plant those, let it bioaccumulate, harvest that, and take it off the land, and you'll physically be able to extract that and get it off the land. But you'd have to know what you were after for that, because certain families selectively bioaccumulate certain heavy metals. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add really to that other than you need to know what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So get some testing done, find out what kind of minerals you might have, or you definitely have that are over, those thresholds. Find out what you're dealing with. Once you know what you're dealing with, it's relatively straightforward and simple to start to remedy those.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, the biggest just blanket statement how to fix this is start building organic matter and biological activity in the soils. You want to start shifting that into, I want to see more fungal activity.
Yep.
If I get out of the highly bacterial activity kind of zone and I start to see more fungal activity, that means I'm holding consistently longer periods of a good soil moisture level, which means my organic matter is high enough to stabilize that biology. It really it just comes down to the biology.
Yep. And the saprophytic fungi are incredibly capable of breaking down sophisticated chemical compounds. So,
and whatever that plant is that you were talking about, it has the really thick, heavy stalks. That's woody mass material. If you can put that down and let it dry out and then do controlled burns of it and then extinguish those controlled burns. And I don't know how big this property was. I don't remember what he said on the size of the property.
30.
Yeah, that's a lot of land. And you're going to even do it in patches, you're going to have to do it the way I just said. I'm going to do a property, not really a property walk, an area walk tomorrow morning before breakfast over on that side of things. And I'll show you an area where Nick kind of played a Fire Marshal Bill character and kept us from burning down my neighbor's yard. We had a brush pile of privet that was back there from some clearing work I had done. And it was the guy that did it did a good job on everything but that. He put it in a really difficult place to burn, but we burned it down, and we didn't do it with any special anything. We just started closest to the neighbor so it would burn back the other way and be less likely to get on the other side of the fence. And then we put it out, and it made a pretty damn nice leaving of charcoal just from doing it that way. So, like, push up the stuff that you want to get rid of anyway, let it dry out, do controlled burns. When I say control, be there, watch it one place at a time and spread it out. Don't worry about crushing it or anything, and then start building up that organic matter, putting in those plants. I think that would help a lot.
All right, well, kind of tying into what you just said, my question is about building organic matter in soil.
Keep the microphone, I can't hear you.
All right, so I want to talk about building organic matter in soil.
Okay.
Here's my situation. I have about a 3-acre area, so it's fairly large. I can't just haul in a bunch of compost for an area that big. My soil, I'm in North Florida, it's basically sand. The good thing is easy to dig, but it's got no nutrients in it. And the other issue, why I'm so stumped, I mean, the logical thing will be, well, just throw down some green manure seeds and mow it down over time. I can't do that because I got a lot of sandburrs, and it would just go, I wouldn't be able to walk out there without being in extreme pain. I have to mow it like every 2 weeks to keep those suckers down. So what can I do to build the organic matter in that case?
Just don't mow it and don't walk in it until you get enough organic matter to put to the ground. Like, your winters, you're not going to have much sandbur growing in your winters in North Florida, right? So, like, seed the hell out of it with ryegrass and roll crimp it in the spring and build up your fertility. Take my cover crop course, use lots of legumes in that, build up some nitrogen, start building up your fertility on it. And then those sandburrs will naturally go away. Who was here in the years of the sandbur terror? You guys know what I'm talking about? Have any of you even seen one and haven't for years? This whole area from here back to the fence, especially right here, is the worst part of the property. And it's nothing but duck manure that really changed that. But the other thing you can do with sandburrs in particular, this won't fix your soil issue, but your sandbur issue, let them actually grow until they're just starting to put the seed heads on, but they're not mature, and then mow them low. That was the extra kick that I did here. You got anything on that too, Nick or Alan?
Oh yeah.
I'm sure he does.
So, you want to go, or you want me to jump in?
I'm gonna say one short thing. I'm sure he's gonna have a whole bunch of amazing detail. Biochar, you're gonna have
Yes.
really low CEC soils.
Yes.
Biochar is gonna do a tremendous amount for you.
Yep.
It's fantastic in those sandy situations. Once you start fixing that low CEC issue, then I would recommend doing a soil test and finding out what you are glaringly deficient on and start remedying that in small amounts. I bet you've got a couple like really big deficiencies that if you just fixed it, calcium is most likely going to be one of your issues. If I had to guess, it depends on your geology. I don't know exactly where you are.
If it's if it's not part of Florida, I'm thinking is probably almost certainly calcium deficient.
Yeah. So I bet your calcium to magnesium ratio is way out of whack. That the biochar.
Yes.
And then there's other smaller things to do after that. But
so what he said was exactly where I was going to jump in first, because what you have is, think about what is sand, right? If you have sandy soil, when you go down and look at sand soil, it's made out of either almost the inorganic constituents are either clay, silt, or sand. Clay are these little tiny platelets. They're very tiny. That's why they can pack down and hold water. Okay, but sand is these huge boulders in comparison. These big, huge boulders. Now it turns out that when you have you have a mineral like calcium or magnesium, okay, and it's in the water, and you want to hold it, not have it go away as soon as the water comes through. What holds on to it? Well, it's electrostatic charges. And guess what? Clay has lots of little sharp edges, and those sharp edges have electrostatic charges, which is what that CEC is, cation exchange capacity. It's the fancy word for this thing can hold on to a mineral and keep it from the water from just washing it away. Sand is this big boulder. How many sharp edges does it have? None. The CEC is like close to zero. That means that when you have any kind of mineral in there that's water soluble, as soon as you get water, it just goes into the water. And what happens to water and sand? Poof. Okay, so every bit of mineral that you can get in there wants to go south and visit the water table. Make sense? Okay, so there's a couple things that biochar is going to do for you. Number one is it introduces a lot of rough surface area with lots of pointy bits. What do you think just happened to your CEC? Like this, right? All of a sudden I can hold on to that and not have it go away. Now you also just installed the condominium for all those soil microbes that are going to build your soil organic matter, because your long term is to build soil organic matter. And starting with dead sand, you have no housing for your workforce, because guess who your workforce is? And this is something for everybody. It used to be that we thought that the way soil organic matter was built was that saprophytic organisms, those things that detrivores, things that break down, would break it down into little chunks, and those chunks left behind were soil organic matter. That is not what happens. What really happens is these saprophytic organisms take it apart almost at the molecular level, and then they rebuild it into soil organic matter. What that means is if you don't have the bacteria and the fungi in your soil, there is no workforce to build soil organic matter. So you need housing for your microbes. And that's true. That's very helpful any kind of soil. So if you don't already have natural housing, you have to add it to fast track this. That's where that other reason that biochar comes in. Get your CEC up, lets you hold on. So when you apply, I agree, go looking for your deficiencies, apply it, but apply a supplement, a soil supplement. That biochar will help you hold on to it so it doesn't just go away. Okay. And as soon as you do that, Now go get some really good compost and make compost extract. Okay, and there's some great, you can go look that up really easily and start applying compost extract every couple of weeks onto it. And that will be getting the good biology. It'll be getting the workforce on the job for you. That will be the jump start. And then what will eventually happen is you will change the germination conditions in the soil.
Yep.
Okay. And the things that you don't really like sandburrs and so forth, they'll stop germinating on you and they'll go away. Okay. That's ultimately the way to get rid of the sandburrs, is to get rid of their germination conditions.
As far as the biochar,
Yeah.
like how much per acre do I need? Like how much?
More than you can probably get.
Right.
So you need this.
Yeah.
This is made by American Biochar. This is liquefied biochar. It also has like all of the biology in it, which is why I haven't used this, because it's been laying around for so long. All the biology is probably dead in it.
Yep.
But this makes it scalable on larger, broader acreage, at least to that initial kick. And this use about 4 ounces per 500 square feet. Diluted. You can also, like, if you have a place that you're doing, they grind the biochar so fine in this. You can use this if you're using like drip irrigation and you're doing like fertigated feeding into your irrigation. It will go through it without clogging it.
Yep.
And I would definitely recommend this product. You can actually take this if you want, Diego. The biology might be dead, but the biochar isn't. And you can have that. I don't know if you actually want to, because I think you didn't check a bag. I don't know if you could take that on an airplane.
No, I'm going to take a picture.
All right, yeah. Yeah, but I think that product is perfect. It's almost like I had it sitting back there waiting for you to ask that question.
So are you?
And those people owe me some money now.
Yep.
That's for the bar. All right. I did say you could have it, so that was smart. That was slick. That was slick. I could have done that. All right.
I have one thing I wanted to share, and then I've got a question. So we were talking about the contour maps during Nick's deal. There's a website, urgr8.ch. So yourgreat.ch has a contour map creation program that uses ArcGIS data and a bunch of other things. You can go down to 1 foot intervals. You basically pick the 2 corners that you want to draw, and you can tell it, I want it every 3 foot, 5 foot. I only want 10. So just wherever it falls out, 10 across this area. And then you can export it into an SVG file and 3D print it, or into a KML file and upload it into Google Earth. Yep. So I've used that to evaluate a bunch of properties I was looking at in the past. Question was, if I want to put catfish in my pond and grow them for food, like how do I need to feed them? Like what's a good on the homestead way to get my feed for the catfish?
How big's your pond?
15,000 gallons.
Okay, so it's a
5 by 40 average, 4 foot deep.
It's a swimming pool.
Yeah.
The swimming pool. All right, that's David's pond. At that level, you're probably gonna have to supplemental feed, and I just use regular old fish feed for that. I mean, on a larger pond, if you build a good ecosystem, it takes care of itself, right? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So like part of the way my systems work, what you'll notice, everything except the big wooden frame ones, because it just is not logistically possible, because they're not low enough to do what I'm about to say. All my other systems, I don't even know what the right term for it is. I invented a term. I call it pitch and return. They all have multiple tanks, not one tank, that water comes up to, flows back through, and returns down to various stages down to your sump, your lowest in the system. There are these little neocardinia shrimp in all of that system, right? When you put them in something like the Miyagi ponds and whatever, the problem is they don't do well because everything eats them, okay? But what you're really trying to do is build a food chain there. So those little shrimp, catfish really don't eat them much except when they're babies, right? But like bluegill do. So what I do, and I don't know where you live if this is legal or not, but it's completely legal here, even though Karen at the Karen Pond refuses to accept that it's legal. And I simply told her to call somebody that actually has authority, like a game warden, and see if he gives a shit. And she just yells at me and I just ignore her. But I go down to the Karen Pond and I throw 2 handfuls of those pellets in the carrying pond, and I throw a 6-foot cast net about 5 minutes later, and then I dump those in a 5-gallon bucket, and I put about 500 freaking bluegills in a cooler in the back of my truck with an inverter plugged into the cigarette lighter, which only people over 45 know what a cigarette lighter plug is. Everybody else calls it 12 volt DC port, and that's plugged into a little pump, a little waterfall thing I made, and I bring them home, and I throw them in there, and that's fun because then you get to watch the murders happen, and they will do it. And the best thing to feed a fish, if you can, is what they would eat in nature.
Yep.
And bluegills, bullheads and channel catfish both will eat the shit out of little bluegills, perch, brim, call them whatever you want to. David, what do you feed your catfish? He doesn't feed them anything. He just leaves their ass to starve, and yet they still grow somehow. And your pond is, but how big is it? So it's about the same size as yours, 13,000 gallons. And my fish, he used to mock me because I used to be much better about this. And I had fish like they'd come up and you could like pet them. Like seriously, like they would just be like, hey man, oh look, it's Jack. Maybe he has something for us. Like, come here, bully, come here, yeah. Now you're gonna get eaten tonight. But yeah, I mean get pellets. That's your backstop. But what? Yeah, because I feed them.
It seriously grows 3 times faster, and the flesh on this actually tastes better because mine have less fat content in them, and the flesh is a lot firmer in them, and also mine are like the same color as his shirt.
Yeah.
On it, so just because I don't dredge my pond, and so all the organic matter that goes down, but all of my channel cat are pitch black. But what I found the key is if you don't want to feed them, if you want it 100% self-sustaining, is once the temperature gets in like the 60s, really 65 and up, you have to plant a water vegetation that's going to have a root crop that goes down at least 18 inches. Because if you don't, and you're growing any like catfish or especially bass are just a pain in the ass. I just don't do them anymore. But any of the catfish species, they eat so voraciously. You have to give your feeding fish cover. And the way that I do that is I use floating vegetation that's got like at least an 18-inch root growth going down. And as long as I do that, my brim, my feeder fish can always outbreed what my fish can eat. And mine's been going on like 14 years now.
Longer than mine, definitely.
And it's honest to God, the only reason we feed them is if we want to see what's in there.
That's a big deal too.
Yeah,
Seeing
but
what's in there.
you have to give them enough cover that they can stay away from it.
They also eat the shit out of goldfish. Okay. But once a goldfish gets about to the size of your hand, they don't anymore because I guess they're just bony. And I've had fish cohabitating where I've got, goldfish the size of my hand. And there's channel cats in there, and you're like, oh, he could totally eat that damn thing, but he doesn't do it. He eats. If you put a bluegill in the same size, he'll eat them. So what you could do with that is you might have, because you already have catfish in it. Yes, you don't. Okay, go to Petco. Let them get the size of your hand, right? Then add the channel cats, and then when they have baby goldfish, which they will, and you can have fun.
You'll never see them.
You can do what I did. You can go out and video it in the spring. You need some floating plants, or you need to make some spawning mops, which is basically take a big bobber and take some yarn if you don't have vegetation, because that's what the goldfish breed by putting their eggs on the roots of floating plants. That's what they want to do. Yep. So they'll do that, and then the catfish will eat the babies. And if you go to the fish forums online, they'll tell you you're stupid. You need to go to goldfish jail. They're the goldfish police. They won't breed like that. They breed like that, and they breed like crazy.
They call them spawning mops because the professional breeders, they use the mop heads.
Yeah.
Is what they put in.
Yeah. And you can do that too. If you have another body of water you have goldfish in that are big enough to spawn, you can put your spawning mops in there, and when you see spawning activity, just put that mop into your other pond and then give them a new mop. And what I did,
the floating.
But when I did the spawning, I had them out there. Remember, I did the video, like a little short video, and I played Barry White music, when they were up in.
He sent me the videos of it.
He's
really
like,
is
you
nice.
win the internet today.
A cool
Yeah,
thing to
I-
do, Sean, is if you'll go up to Jack's Big Miyagi, he's got like 50 or 100-gallon the black tubs floating around inside there. A lot of those are breeding pools. That's what I float in mine too. So like I'll buy like 500 rosies or 500 goldfish online because it's the cheapest way to do them, and I'll dump them in there. Just drill small holes in it so that you get the same circulation, and it'll isolate your smaller fish, and they'll breed in there, and you've got like this forever breeding platform. And then if you can change the size of the holes that are drilled in it, and they'll just self-feed forever. And like you can have your own breeding colony for years and years in there until they freeze out because it doesn't get deep enough.
How much land do you have? 10 acres. Plant mulberries.
I have some.
Plant mulberries.
I have one from Nick that I forgot to take out of the pot. Just won't been calling out.
So this will not feed your catfish year round, but believe it or not, catfish don't eat mulberry leaf, but they love mulberries. And so, like, if you just like kick the mulberry tree when it's at stage where they'll drop on a tarp and throw that in your water, they'll eat the shit out of that. Just don't give them too much at once with any food.
You know what Texas A&M says to do when you start a pond? Dump a bunch of cow shit in your pond, let it algae bloom, then put 200 perch in it, let them eat the algae bloom for the first year, and then it'll always be self-sustaining when you stock with your catfish. And you can go online, and Texas A&M, they're like, feed it full of shit, let it algae bloom, give your feeder fish 1 year, and as long as they've got cover, then it should always stay on top of what your catfish are.
Yeah, one of the only things I'd consider adding to that is I don't know if you're raising quail, rabbits, anything like that, where you're ending up with kind of a surplus of garbage, guts, things that you're needing to get rid of. Feed those to black soldier fly larva bins, and then just dump that directly in there. It's
like the proverbial lemmings.
Yep. Yeah.
Like my quail cages would make my black soldier flies. You can't not have them as long as you keep it wet. Yeah. And I would just put ramps off, and depending on the size of the ramp is how fast it'll feed. Or Dubai roaches.
Yeah, Dubai roaches are great.
I had a floating Dubai roach hotel for like 5 years. I would just anchor it in the middle so that they couldn't get to the edges, and they would breed in like the roach hotel, and the small ones would fall through, and the fish would eat them, but enough roaches would stay up that they would just keep breeding. And they can't fly, so as long as you don't let them get toward the edge, they won't propagate out.
So back to the wife question.
Yeah. So one of the things, there's surprisingly not much really good information on how to set up pond systems to be ecologically self-propagating. A lot of the research that's been out there has been for stocking game fishing ponds. Yeah. And so we had to do a lot of work to figure this out. And I don't have time to go through all of it right now, but we'll say it's like, I've had to go in and create large ecological land, lakes and ponds, some, hundreds of acres. The thing is that those emergent plants are critically important. That's what you're hearing from, doing it in the small. The thing is, most of your emergent plants, this is the habitat for your breeders. Most of your emergent plants want less than 18 inches of water. And the most aggressive emergent plants will go to 36 inches. Almost no plant will go more than 36 inches. Okay. A lot of ponds, if you have a professional pond builder come in and build it, they're going to want to do what I call a bathtub cut. They're going to cut immediately down to more than 36 inches because they're so used to their customers not wanting emergent plants to get established.
No cattails.
No cattails, right? And so what they'll do is they'll come in and let's go like this, and you'll never have any emergent plants. That means that it's very hard to get the kind of habitat you need in that kind of pond to actually ever make it ecologically self-sustaining. So here's what you do, super fast. Give yourself what I call, so bathtub cut about 1/3 of your pond edge for a big pond and step cut the other 2/3. The other 2/3 has a step down, so at nominal pond depth, it's between 6 and 18 inches, and then it tapers off down to about 3 feet and then cuts down. And then establish your edge plants all around that. that is going to clean up your water, and it's going to also, and make that not just this, make it big. If it's a big pond, make it big. Okay. You can establish a lot of productive plants in that, in almost every ecosystem. But it creates all that habitat for your fish to spawn and for the young to survive. Then you drop off into your deep water. Okay. And it also gives you about a third where people can get up to it and access it and get into it without getting into prime snake habitat. So it keeps you out of water moccasin territory, right? And if you do all this right, and we also put like root balls into the edge for extra habitat. I'll put rock cairns at the bottom, okay, with different size rocks to also create habitat. There's a lot more tricks we could get into, but what we're basically doing is we're giving ourselves diverse habitat so this can become an ecologically balanced system that will feed itself. And now all you have to do is just harvest it. Once it's going, you can just harvest it. There's no work, there's no feeding to it. It just feeds itself. There's things you can do to speed it up, but if you don't, then it'll just keep on going.
Build your pond like that, not like that for your profile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A profile like drill.
Yeah.
What you said.
I was gonna just say this is the way.
Yep. And by the way,
Do it. We gotta-
I don't-
Sean can't do it. He doesn't
Yeah.
have space.
yeah, I don't put bass in anything. Bass, I'll top it off at bluegill if I'm going in a bluegill direction, because the bass will just eat out all the bluegill, and the bluegill are better eating than the bass. The only reason to do bass is because they're better, fishing. And the fish are
They're pain in the ass because they're carnivores.
right.
Catfish eat anything. Bluegills eat anything.
Yep.
They'll eat your duckweed. They'll eat your
Yeah.
pellets.
Yep.
Very few bass, unless they're raised in a hatchery, will eat a pellet.
Yep.
So if you have bass, that means you have to have a constant supply of baby fish for them. So you're going to find yourself ordering a lot of fish. They're
Right.
an absolute pain in the ass.
Your stocking companies want to sell you bass because they know if you get bass in your pond, they have business for life.
Yeah.
They know that you're going to have to come back to them year after year after year for stocking. So they love to get bass in your ponds.
They're not near as hardy. You have to have a much higher O2 content
Yep.
in your pond with them. So when you get to July and August, you're not aerating and you don't have constant water supply, then there's a good chance you're going to lose your bass. They're a pain in the ass. Peacock bass, however, are fun shit. They die at 55 unless you give them depth, but they're super aggressive. They grow super fast. Illegal, but who cares?
You know, it's really fun, David, staying in somebody's guest room who has a giant compressor on the other side of the wall where the bed is, and then you go to sleep, and it's like ladyfingers when that compressor comes on.
If you go out and look at my two Miyagi ponds, which David came up with the name because he said it looked like something from Mr. Miyagi's backyard. They're the two timber frame ponds. There's one right at the corner of the garage right there, and there's one out back in the center of the garden. I couldn't do what Alan said because it's not possible to build a box and have it do what Alan said.
Mm-hmm.
What I did instead is I built towers out of cinder blocks, and I laid floor tile across the spaces between them to create those shelves, to create that environment in basically what is a giant outdoor fish tank. And so, Sean, you could do that. You could create some kind of shelving that would create that skinny water, because that's where your little things hide out, is up in the skinny water.
Yep.
And as they get bigger, they begin venturing a little further out. Sometimes they go a little bit too early. They're not quite ready yet, and they get chomped. And that's how you can do that as well. And you're in Tennessee, right? Yeah, mosquito fish will live up there. Put mosquito fish in your pond. You could take mine, get a net, take as many as you want.
If you have bathtub cuts, the way to cheat it, I spend a lot of time at like the Vietnamese and the Korean fisheries.
Mhm.
What they do when they've got the deep cuts is they do just that. They float like the 50-gallon stock tanks because they're between 12 and 18 inches deep.
Yep.
And almost all aquatic vegetation grows off of rhizomes or off of the stems off of them.
Yes.
And so that will give you this solid pod of things, and then they'll branch out of that, and you'll have like 9-foot circles out of each tub that'll grow.
Yep.
And it's a way that you can get that aquatic vegetation in a bathtub cut
Yes.
situation.
So 2 other quickie things on all this. When you're doing quickie ponds in homesteads, one of the things I always do is we have that area that's bathtub cut so that we can get, like, if you have kids especially that want to get into if they want to get in the pond or whatever, that gives them a safe place to get in and out without having to climb through the vegetation and possibly get in with things that might bite them. So what I'll always do is I'll put a flat rock in that's actually partially submerged, and you can step down into it. So what this does is, if kids get into the pond, it gives them a safe place to get out. And if you need to know details, I'll show you the details of how to do that. But it gives you a safe way in and out of any pond, and that way, if somebody gets in, if you've ever gotten to a pond, some of these ponds, getting out's very slick. Yeah. So I always put a pond egress on a large pond, and it's usually the step down. It's really nice. You can swim up to it and get out really easily. And I won't get it. The other thing I'd say is, if you got a large pond, direct aeration of that pond is really difficult. It takes a lot of work. So what I do is I'll actually use entrainment aeration. And what that is, anybody familiar with the bubblers that do entrainment? This is the way for a pond of any reasonable size, anything that's an acre or larger. If you need aeration, use one of the like Vertex bottom, so forth. I've aerated massive things with that, and in very little power. What it's doing is it's using bubbles. But you have an air compressor on the shore, and a weighted air hose goes down to the bubbler, and then when it releases, the bubbles come up. But it's not the bubbles that are doing all the aeration. They do some. It's literally entraining and pulling a column of water up, and it's moving that water like this, and it will break up anaerobic layers deeper in your pond. Okay, so if you have anaerobic problems deep in a large pond, and you try to directly aerate it, you're gonna you use one of these things, and it will help you aerate that pond all the way to the bottom. And we've taken anaerobic ponds that had 16 to 24 inches of anaerobic gick on the bottom, and completely metabolized that and cleaned it all up in one season by just getting the oxygen down there, so that the aerobic decomposers could decompose it, break it down, and that just completely remediated the whole pond system.
It breaks that thermocline effect.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so thank you so much, everybody. We are at the end of time, and you cannot wrest this from my cold, dead hands. But if you want to continue the pond discussion, do you want to continue the pond discussion, Alan?
I mean, we haven't even talked about mirromictic.
I mean, you could
holomictic
sit
lakes.
right there and do a breakout session. Let's give everybody a hand. We've got 2 breakout sessions starting in like 5 minutes, including yours. Yeah. Okay. So where do we go from here? It's breakout session time. All of your pond questions can go. Like, there's a lot of knowledge to have there. Yeah. And you need to write it down if you have a breakout session on the board. And then we will be doing Tell Your Story in 5 minutes over dinner. So have fun, guys. Thank you. Thanks to these guys. Give them a round of applause.